Hello, everybody, and good morning. Welcome to another episode of CLX Foundry Live, where I come on and sound awkward. Excuse me. Hi, I'm your host, DJ BluePDX, and here with me, of course, our lead technical expert, Paul Steffens, and master builder, Christian Garrett, are with me, and they are going to be helping build a system and assemble it from the ground up for a customer. And this is going to be for Matthew in North Carolina. Guys, how are you? We're just back from TwitchCon. How was your weekend? That's a plus. Well, I'll tell you who's winning today. It's Matthew in North Carolina, who's got a beast of a build. This is a pretty powerful one.
Yeah, this is a really nice build. Yeah, he is a lucky dude. All
right, so let's take a look at what we're putting inside.
All right, so we'll start off with the processor and just go from there. So this is starting off the i9-12900KF. Cooling that CPU, we've got a 240 rad. There we go, 2 fans fit on there. The motherboard we're going to be using is an ASRock Z690 Steel Legend DDR5.
Ooh, that's a big one.
Yeah, I think we've used this. I think we used this in the last build, and we've probably done another one before that.
It's a hefty motherboard.
Yeah, and what we like with this one, it comes with a nice GPU brace here. I'll kind of show it in the packaging. We'll explain this a little later and show you how it's installed. But that's one of our favorite things about this board.
It's a very tall board.
It is, yeah. It's a full ATX, big heat sinks on there. Yeah, it is.
At first glance, it looks like a miniature of an office building. You know, that you're like, all right, here's our plans to develop this block, and there's a,
Right. Yeah. A little bit of development or whatever. Good. So the memory, we've obviously got DDR5. We're using Oloy RGB. This is 4800 speed. It's 2 sticks of 16 gigabyte for a total of 32 gigs.
Wow, I didn't know the DDR5 came in RGB.
This is the first time I'm seeing it. Typically we have the Kingston that we use here, but yeah, a lot more is becoming available now. So
I know we do have the G-Skill.
The
DDR5,
G-Skill?
that's RGB as well.
Yeah, okay, I haven't seen that one yet.
Those are real nice. I like the G-Skill.
Yeah, G-Skill's good. For our drives, we've got a Kingston 500 gig M.2 drive for our main operating system, and then we've got a Western Digital Blue 4 terabyte for our storage drive.
Wow, so lots of memory there.
Mm-hmm. We're going to be cooling it with 7 of our CLX RGB fans.
Nice.
We'll show the orientation there. And for our video card, we've got a beast today. This is a Zotac RTX 3090.
Good Lord.
So we'll get to show off a little bit of what a third-party cooler looks like on here. It is a big card. We'll go over that as well.
I think this might be the first time we've done a non-Founders Edition.
I think so too. Yeah, I think so. And I've got that other video card too, so we can kind of explain more about that.
Awesome.
Powering this build, we've got an EVGA 850 watt BQ. So this is an 850 watt bronze. This is a semi-modular power supply. Might be the first semi-modular that we've done on the show too, so we can explain that a little later as well.
Okay, awesome, sounds good.
And all of that is going to be going into this Leon Lee 011. This is the XL, it's the silver one. I think we have done one silver before, but this one looks nice.
Those 011s are just gorgeous and brilliantly designed.
Yeah, they're great cases. We love them. It's been a while since I've seen a silver, so yeah. Well, I will start getting these panels unboxed, and Christian can start on the board, and we'll just get going.
All right, so Christian, let's talk a little bit about the board and what we're doing with it. Obviously, this is a big board. It's got a lot of heat sinks on it. And so one of the things that I'm always wondering is different manufacturers have, different elements that they use to help make the assembly easier. What kind of features are on the Steel Legend D5 that help you as an installer?
Sorry, give me 1 second. One of the things I like about this board is just I like the M.2 shield, very easy to access. Just these 2 screws here.
Yeah, it's nice when it's just those 2 screws.
Yeah, sometimes we'll have a whole plate that covers.
Take off like a wired unplug sometimes. So.
Make sure you take off your little plastic deal on your M.2 shield. Then let's see, some motherboards have a M.2 stand where you don't even need a screw. It's just this little plastic clip that you push to the side. That's a nice feature.
Interesting.
It's not on this motherboard, but let's see. Sorry.
Well,
It is
and
something that's
the big
nice.
thing that I like how they always flip up. You know, they always like a little skateboard ramp. It just kind of pops up and sits there until you log it down.
Yeah.
It makes it easier for taking it out. That's for sure.
It really does. Putting these in is so easy.
And having a magnetic screwdriver to put that in there to keep that screw on is great, because if you drop those tiny little screws, that's difficult to recover from. I think is that one of the reasons why it's just smarter to assemble these elements ahead of time like you're doing now?
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
So when it comes to I/O heat shielding, obviously we've got quite a bit of material there. Why is that so large, and how is that going to help? How is that an advantage for the board?
Yeah, so those heat shields they're placed strategically on that board on the components that do get hot. They're not completely necessary. Like there's some other boards that have those with no heat shields, but having those heat shields will allow them to run cooler and at better speeds, allow more power to be delivered to them. So gives you a little bit more longevity and a better performing board.
Yeah, I feel like you'll see those heat sinks on like the higher end motherboards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right on the VRMs there.
Gotcha.
And that rule just kind of applies for anything with the heat shield on it, like the M.2 cover there. It's got a really nice heat shield on it that'll allow it to stay cool, but not necessary to operate. Just you will get better performance by having it.
Excellent. And I did just, yeah. So as far as items on this, let's take a look. We've obviously got, you're putting in the CPU bracket right now for the cooler.
As you're peeling all the
like
nice
it.
plastic off right now.
Gotcha. Guess we don't want
Let's
that
see,
smell of burning plastic. That would be bad.
Yeah.
So this motherboard is an LGA 1700, so it's a socket 1700, so it's good for all the latest gens of Intel processors. How many different generations of processors are available with the 1700 socket?
Yeah, so it's 12th gen right now, and I believe 13th gen is going to be able to use it as well.
Excellent. And of course, those 13 gens, which just were recently announced, look absolutely amazing. We got a chance to see some of those while we were at TwitchCon, and I know we're going to show you a little thing about TwitchCon a little bit later in the show. Jason did an amazing job with the video.
Nice. Yeah, we're pretty excited to see the next generation of Intel. We've heard really good things about it. Really good speeds.
Well, it's fast. Intel had a gaming event on Thursday night that was just wild. We had got to see some of our CLX machines there, which were incredible. I don't know if I can talk about the one. Well, I guess I can talk about the one that was out there in public. You know what? I'll wait for the surprise, and we'll let people know that at the end of the show. So we're getting that
build.
right, getting that motherboard in there. This, of course, is a 15-phase Dr. Mouse power design. For those of you who don't understand what the phase power designs do, can one of you explain that?
Yeah, so that power phase design, the more it's kind of like a filter that makes the power delivery smoother and cleaner, just kind of like if you had a water filter to get out some of the bad stuff. That's what that power phase is doing. So getting smoother electricity to all the components on there is going to provide better performance and just longer lasting components as well.
Gotcha. And what's interesting about this board, even though the processor doesn't, the processor we'll talk about in a second, it's a 12900KF, which means it doesn't have onboard graphics. And I have a couple questions about that in a second, but it's interesting because the graphics output options for this board has an HDMI and a display port. Now, I'm assuming that those are, first of all, it's rare that I ever see a motherboard that has two different ways to push graphics out. But this board has both a DisplayPort and an HDMI. Is that going to function without a onboard graphics for the processor?
So those will not function since our processor does not have that. So that can be kind of a common thing when you get a new PC. If you look at the back of it, obviously it's all put together. So you'll see video outputs on the motherboard and also the video card. So sometimes, you know, if you're not familiar with computers and you get your PC, you might plug your monitor into the motherboard and wonder why your system's not getting video. It's a really common thing. You just want to make sure you go a little lower and plug it into the video card there.
There you go. Yeah, I've had a friend do that, and it was amazing because she couldn't figure out why. She was only getting maybe 30, 35 frames per second, and we're like, maybe your graphics card isn't plugged in all the way. Turns out she was plugged into the motherboard.
Yeah, that's a really common thing. We do get a lot of calls about that. So we put a sticker or a cover over that I/O shield when we ship the computers and have an arrow pointing with where to plug into your monitor. So that should help a lot.
I will say that Hiccup became extraordinarily handy in Rainbow Six Siege after she plugged it into the graphics card. She's a beast. She's an absolute beast at Rainbow Six Siege now, and it's wild because we walk in and she just knocks everybody out while giggling.
That's awesome.
So, which is a good thing, you know. Always make sure you got the thing plugged into the right stuff. And of course, if you have questions about that and you've got a CLX gaming PC, don't worry. Your PC comes with with forever technical support and labor. Parts is a whole different story, but you can always call in if you have questions. If it's not performing right, let us know. If you have questions here right now about any of the things that we're talking about, please throw them into the chat. I will be happy to ask the boys about it. As far as, let's talk about USB ports. It's always essential that when you are building your PC that you keep in mind how many different peripherals you have installed. If you're a content creator, you may have multiple different mics, maybe a Go XLR, your Stream Deck, microphones, cameras. So along with your keyboard, your mouse, your mouse pads in some cases, how many ports does this have?
Yeah, so on the motherboard, we've got 5 regular USBs. Those are 3.0s, but I say regular because they look like the regular ones that most USB will plug in, and then 1 Type-C. And then this case also has 4 regular USBs on the front and also a Type-C on the front. So
nice.
Plenty of ports to plug in everything you need.
And when it comes to spaces on the boards, this also has quite a number of M.2 slots. So we've got 2 Hyper M.2s, so we can add another one onto there. Plus, it's got an Ultra M.2. What is the primary advantage of having Ultra over Hyper?
So you're just going to get better transfer, read and write speeds with that. So whether you're downloading something or maybe you have a game on there or something like that, it's going to be a little bit faster having that. Or like downloading a game or uploading it.
Nice. This thing also comes with the ASRock graphics card holder.
That is my favorite thing about this board.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
Yeah, so we've got that here. Do you have it over there, Christian?
I do.
All right. So I'll go ahead and start opening this up and we can kind of show how it works here. So obviously graphics cards have gotten really big in the past few years. There's always been big ones, but really recently they're just getting bigger and bigger. And that's great, and we've got reinforced PCIe slots to help hold those, but there will be a little bit of GPU sag. And that's where if you're looking inside the system, the right side of the video card where it's not mounted will kind of lean down a little bit like this, kind of tilt, and that's okay, but obviously you want it to be in there as straight as possible. So this motherboard comes with a GPU brace, which this part mounts to the case and above the motherboard. And then there's a piece right here that slides up and down. And we're gonna slide that up to where it's holding the GPU up, and then we're gonna put a screw in there to hold it in place. Some video cards that are really big will come with a brace, but they mount the exact same as the GPU does. So while it helps a little bit, it's not near as good as this. So this is the best designed GPU base that I've seen yet.
Well, and and just so we're clear, everyone, we're not fat shaming the the GPU, but we are saying it's on performance enhancing technology. So it's on that technological career team right now. So Dot Chaos in the house, welcome. I know we've got Shasta in here as well. All right, so getting the cables pushed back in there now. Are we're not putting in the we haven't put in the graphics yet. Now it's fans are up next. I will say I got a question for Christian though. Christian, as far as because you both have mentioned that you really love it when motherboards do this, how much easier is it, or do you see less strain overall and a lower percentage of returns when it comes to having those for a motherboard as opposed to those that don't?
Yeah, just like you said, the amount of returns is insane. Just these video cards they're
so
monsters.
big.
They're absolute monsters. And you need some sort of reinforcement. These PCIe slots are not made to hold an 8-pound video card.
And then if you got a carrier that's throwing the package in the back of a truck, we do have foam that goes in and it fills in all the gaps, and so that is obviously a big help. But these braces that are mounted to the case, I mean, it just holds it so sturdy.
It's a game changer.
It's one of the biggest challenges in this business is shipping the computer. So it's really nice to have these here.
The upside is that this board has a 6-layer PCB and 2-ounce copper PCB. So is that going to help with that support?
It might not help with the support, but that will help with the longevity of the board as well. So that refers to kind of the thickness and the layers of actual PCB in there.
Nice. Now, I do know that this is a DDR5 board, and it's got reinforced DIMM slots, which is great. What does DIMM stand for? DIMM.
So I don't know what the D and I think the D is dual or dynamic. I'm not sure what the I is, but I know the MM is memory module. So what a DIMM is just referring to that slot that the memory is installed in.
Gotcha. Okay, dual inline, there we go. Dual inline memory module.
Yep.
So, and this is going to sound like a question from an old person because it is a question from an old person. I remember back when back when we had laptops that you could flip over and there was little panels in the back because you could upgrade your RAM, and there was the short ones. It was, I think it was SO RAM.
Yeah, it was SODIMM, I believe.
Yeah.
SODIMM.
Yes. Is that, did they just finally take off the SO, or is that a specific type of?
It's still SODIMM RAM. So like, I'm sure there's SODIMM DDR4 and DDR5 out there for the notebooks. That's just kind of the form factor of the stick.
I guess you could say that's SODIMM cool. Sorry. It's got PCIe 5 and surface mount technology for this. As far as it's got incredible audio, but it also has a Dragon port on there, a Dragon Ethernet port. It's a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port. That seems like a lot.
That is, the standard has really been 1 gigabit, and that was obviously a big deal a long time ago, and that's a great transfer speed, and that's what's been normal. And now we're starting to see the 2.5 gigabit, which is obviously 2.5 times better than that. So it's pretty cool to start seeing that become standard. This is obviously a little bit of a higher end board, so most boards now still have that single gigabit port. But I think probably in a year or two we're just going to start seeing 2.5 be the standard across everything.
Which is, and that's, again, before we started the show, I don't think I've seen gigabit land, but that's it. I'd never seen boards with 2.5 or 10 gigabit ports, or in some cases, both. We got Torbit in the house, welcome. So, as far as that speed goes, I wonder if that's why they make a non-Wi-Fi board, because you've got that, with that port in there, you've got more than enough bandwidth to get your data in and out.
Yeah, it could be. It could save a little bit on price too. It might be like $10-20 cheaper than one with onboard. I like myself, I don't need Wi-Fi, so I just run like a 200-foot Ethernet cord across the house.
For those people who are really looking to personalize the look of their PC, this board also comes with Polychrome Sync and Polychrome RGB by ASRock to give it a little bit of a flair. How does that work?
Yeah, so that refers to the RGB on the board, and with that, if our other RGB components, what they are, which they are, will sync up with the board. So you can have our fans, our RAM, anything that's RGB, all sync up with the board, so it's all showing the same colors, or going through the same cycles, all at the same time, which can look pretty cool.
One other small side note that I know, but I'm pretty sure that both of you appreciate, is that all of the heat sinks on these boards are anti-drop screw. In fact, pretty much everything on this board is anti-drop screw.
Yeah, love that.
Love that. So we can show that too. This does have a storage drive, so once we get this back panel off here, you know, later on in the build, we can kind of show how that works as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we've got all these different USB ports. We've even got USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type Cs, which are extremely fast data on there. And I think we're going to start seeing more and more, I would say, boards with more than one Type C.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I mean, obviously, we're going to have to keep the now, and I want to make sure I'm saying this right, because I may be confused on this. As far as ports go, you've got Type A, which is that the printer style port
for USB?
Or is that, yeah.
So Type A is going to be like where the actual plastic piece in that port is black.
Okay. And then Type B would be the blue, or red in some cases, depending on the manufacturer's preference of colors. And then Type C is
actually, I think I have that wrong. I think Type A is like for if you ever seen like a USB cable to a printer. That's what it is. It's like square, but like the top corners are kind of at an angle. Yeah. I was mixing that up with 2.0, 3.0, and 3.1. So,
well, and so that's where it gets super confusing, and that's what I wanted to ask. We've got Type A that is like a printer cord. We've got Type B that is the square port, the rectangular port.
Right.
And then we've got Type C, which is the oval port.
Right.
So then we've got, from there's, I guess that's the shaping of the port, and then you've got the USB 1.0, 2.0, and then 3.0, 3.1, and 3.2. Are those just generational, or is there added advantage to, say, data speeds and functionality?
Yeah, so they are generational, and it is for the data transfer speeds. So there is, based on that, you know, Type A, Type B, and Type C, there is a lot of different Type Bs that start out with, you know, 2.0, 2.1, 2.2, and so on. Same with 3.0, 3.1, 3.2. The higher the number is, pretty much the better transfer speed it's going to be. Yeah, they are backwards compatible with each other as long as they're all Type B. So you could plug in your 3.2 thumb drive into a 2.0 slot on your board. The transfer speed is just going to be limited by that slot.
Is the power supply options the same? I mean, aside from USB-C, because USB-C can punch a whole lot of more power through it. But for Type B, I'm going to go through the letters and numbers. It's like back in algebra. I hated algebra. But Type B, is it all going to be the same amount of level of power that you can transmit through there?
Yeah, so I don't know if it's the exact same power that's going through them. They might be a little bit slighter higher voltages going through that. I'm not sure on that, but I know that they will work. They are backwards compatible.
Awesome.
So they will be designed that way.
Sorry to take us on a tangent there. I just realized these are things that I've wondered and that I wasn't sure I was understanding correctly. So I'm glad we cleared that up.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's good. It's good to be reminded of that printer cable, because we do see that we have those who have like Type A to Type B USB extensions, and it's like, oh yeah, I haven't used one of those in a long time.
My digital mixer that I use when I'm streaming, that my main DJ mixer connects to, actually is a Type A to Type C.
Oh, okay. Oh, Type A to Type C.
Type A to Type C
That's
cable. I was like,
interesting.
okay.
Yeah.
Now, I do see that Christian's getting our fans on our AIO, which is an all-in-one 240 cooler. Tell us about that cooler.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, it is an AIO, which stands for all-in-one. And what that means is everything to cool this is all right here. So there's already fluid in here and the tubes. Our pump is right here. Don't need to add any fluid or mess with it in any way possible. So that is really nice for installing a liquid cooler, getting you better temps that way. There is open loop systems, which we also offer here. You can do soft tubing or hard tubing on there. Most of what we see is hard tubing, and we actually custom bend the tubes for each system. We come up with a design on each system, and that gets really intense. Christian actually does that here, so it's really cool to see those. Those are the really flashy showcase systems that will have crazy color fittings and liquid and everything, so those are really cool.
Nice. We do have a question coming in from the chat, and that is from Shastow. Shastow asks, AIO coolers versus air coolers, what's better?
Yeah, so if we were just using a stock air cooler that would come with the CPU itself, this AIO is going to perform a lot better than that, which is going to allow us to get better temperatures and will allow your CPU to boost up more than what it could with that air cooler. That being said, if you don't want a liquid cooler in your system for whatever reason, there are some third-party aftermarket air coolers that do perform pretty well. You can definitely get one that would perform better than a 120 cooler. Once we get up to a 240 and a 360 radiator, it is a lot harder for an air cooler to match that. But I'm sure there's some out there that would keep up with the 240. I don't know about a 360. I haven't seen one myself that would keep up with that. But there are options for there. If you're looking for one, I would recommend Noctua. They're known for being really great coolers, great fans.
Thank you.
Excellent question, Shasta. All right, so right now we're connecting. What are you doing over there, Christian?
So right now I'm putting in my CPU cables. If you can see, plugging in my CPU cable here. I'm gonna do this before putting in my all-in-one. This just gives me some extra room. This makes it a little more manageable for me to get this cable through.
And this is probably a good time to bring up the power supply here. So,
yeah,
like we mentioned when we were talking about it, this is a semi-modular power supply. So these cables that I've got in my hand here are soldered in. And then we do have ports to plug in all of our modular cables here. So this board requires two 8-pin CPU powers. So for the semi-modular design, we have our 24-pin, which we will always need, a CPU 8-pin, 4+4, which we'll always need, and then a single GPU connector here. So Christian's plugged in the other CPU cable that we need and running it, and he'll plug that into the power supply once we get this installed.
Awesome. So as a general rule, when it comes to semi-modular power supplies, is it usual that the elements that are soldered in are pretty much the basics that you'll always need to use?
Yep, pretty much, yeah. You'll always need a 24-pin, always need a CPU, and 99.9% of the time need a video card cable.
There we go. And then you just add whatever else in that you might need.
Yep.
So as far as cooling goes, and this is going to be a weird one, I guess, obviously 360s is 3 fans, 240 is 2 fans, and if you've got something like mine, it's a 160. I mean, sorry, a 120, but push pull. The i9 12900KF, which does run a little bit differently than the regular than the K, because it doesn't have the graphics element in there. Will that run slightly cooler than the K?
So we're seeing pretty much the same temperatures across the K and the KF. There is a little bit of a silicon lottery when you're buying CPUs to have some sort of like maybe this 12900K is run slightly better than this other 12900K, and that's called the silicon lottery because it refers to the silicon in the chip. It's just a lottery because some silicon is better than others, basically. But we do see very similar temperatures across the 12900K and 12900KF.
Gotcha. So I guess my next question is, like, for me, with my system, it's not enough to cool my 9900K. So and I had to vent my system differently now. What are some good telltale signs that your system might be in danger of overheating? What are some of those temperatures to look at? Because a lot of people monitor those temperatures through their BIOS or through elements that are provided on the motherboard or through third-party applications.
Yeah, so some of the first things you can do, you can just listen to your system. Is it really loud? Are the fans spinning really fast? That's the first thing to look at. You obviously feel your exhaust fan. Do you feel a lot of heat coming out? But then if you do have monitoring software in there, you're looking at it in Task Manager, and you're seeing your temperatures. What we're seeing for 12th gen and some of the newer Intel CPUs is if you're running at full load in a gaming mode, you'll probably see them at 90C, which obviously that is really hot, but they are functioning fine in there. So it kind of depends on what model of CPU you have, but you can just look up, if you've got like an older processor, you can just like type into Google like what's normal operating temperature for whatever CPU you've got, and just kind of go off there. Some things you can do to help cool it are obviously install more fans if your case allows for it. Definitely check all your filters. Hopefully your case has magnetic filters like this one does, that you can just take off and wipe out, clean out your fans. But yeah.
So if it do, like for me, I can tell it's hot because anytime I start playing like Rainbow Six Siege, specifically Siege, this puppy starts churning out some heat like it's wild. And that's when I started realizing, okay, I feel uncomfortable with this, and then I vented the side of it. And if I reach in and touch the hoses while I'm playing the game, the hoses are hot.
Yeah.
So
If
if the hoses are hot, I take it that's not a good sign.
Your hoses shouldn't be hot. Obviously, if it's running, then that's
really?
good. But yeah, hoses probably shouldn't be. They shouldn't be like really hot to the touch. I mean, you should be able to hold them and they can be warm. But if it's like burning your hand to keep them on there, you might want to look into cooling to a different cooling solution. But everything, all the PCs nowadays are designed to shut down when they get too hot. So just know that if your PC is too hot, it will shut off.
Gotcha.
As a preventative thing, not shut off because something broke. It's shutting off to protect itself, and it might not turn right back on because it's waiting to cool off. So if that does happen, give it a couple minutes, then turn it back on.
I Love P-Step says, is AMD or Intel better?
Oh man, that's a loaded question I'm getting asked right now. I use Intel in my personal machine. It's all about what you want. The new AMD stuff though is looking really good. So when I started building PCs, it was typical. Intel was more expensive, ran a lot cooler, but AMD was definitely more bang for your buck. It was almost kind of like a budget build. Like my first build was an AMD CPU because you get really high clock speeds. You get better clock speeds for your money. Things have kind of changed nowadays, but yeah.
Well, and the difference between hyper-threading versus, we've got hyper-threading and then
multi-threading.
Multi-threading, there we go.
Yep.
Hyper-threading and multi-threading. I have one of each, to be honest. I have my AMD system is my production system for my stream, so that handles Discord and OBS, my GoXLR software, and it runs all three of my monitoring monitors. So I've got my, chat monitor, a secondary video monitor, so I can see what chat's seeing, and it's right here, and then my production screen, which is on this side. And I like it. I think AMD works really well, and I for that as a workstation, I really enjoy that. When it comes to gaming, most of the games that I do testing for all have me on. I'm a tester for Intel builds. So it's important for me to have an Intel processor. I have always gamed on Intel processors, and so I've just kind of stuck with that because it's also part of what I do. I'm not on the show. But I think, it's up to personal preference and what, it is down to also price line, etc.
Yeah.
Which is better? So Lila P. Steph says, let's clarify, which is better for gaming, Intel or AMD? Again, you're going to find both schools of thought on that one, because some people are going to be really advocating for that hyper-threading versus the other side of the coin, which is people who advocate for the multi-threading.
Yeah, my biggest fan is trying to get us in some trouble here, I think. No, I'm glad you brought up the hyper-threading and multi-threading thing, because I kind of forgot about that. When AMD came out with Ryzen, that really changed the game as far as AMD goes, and that's when we started seeing multi-threading. And that was always like a really big deal. If you had hyper-threading, you're doubling your cores essentially, and AMD didn't have that. So once Ryzen came out and they started using multi-threading, that was a really big deal. And it kind of now seems like whatever came out most recently is the best. So right now, like the 7950X build that we did, or the 7900X that's out, that's like really awesome and probably like the best out there right now. And then we'll see what happens when Intel launches their 13th gen.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of back and forth there.
So, PSF says, but one has to give you better FPS. And I would think, and Paul, correct me if I'm wrong here, wouldn't that be more dependent upon your GPU?
I mean, it can be. It depends on the game you're playing. So it's kind of a hard question to answer because it will change depending on what game that you're testing on.
Yeah.
And then like a lot comes into your cooling as well. So if you're running the newest of new on like air coolers and stuff, well, you could have an older, like a last generation CPU on a water cooler that's able to boost up to its max the whole time you're gaming, and maybe that'll perform better. So there's a lot of factors that kind of go into that.
So again, it's going to come down to personal preference on that one, and there is no right or wrong answer.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with no right or wrong. Yeah.
Also, since we work with both companies, we're going to maintain that there is no right or wrong answer.
Yeah. Put your money into the company that you like.
We love them both.
Yeah, we do. We do.
It's like twins. Which one is better? Well, we like them both.
Yeah. The one who's upset me the least that day.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
It changes on the regular.
Yeah. We do have favorites, and you kids need to fight for it. So, yeah.
Speaking of fighting, the one thing you don't have to fight with the O11 series is all of the air filters, because they're magnetic.
Yeah.
And they slide in and out for ease of use and ease of cleaning. Paul, show us what those look like and how to work them.
Yeah, so that was really great timing, DJ, because Christian is installing the last hot fan right here. So this is our magnetic cooler here. He's got his last fan going in, last screw right there. I'll show you how this installs. And
Perfect.
all this is gonna do is just sit right there on top.
Oh, wow.
That's it. And then when you're ready to clean it, you just take it off, rinse it off, wipe it down, make sure it's dry, and then throw it back on there. And this case does have, it obviously has one on top. There's two panels on the side here that will be there as well. And then we do have one in the bottom. The one in the bottom is in a tray. So that one's not magnetic, but it doesn't need to be since it has that tray.
Well, and these, the O11s are nice because they are not flat on the bottom. They've actually got two sets of feet, one at the front and one at the back, which means it does have a lifted area for you to get that airflow in through the bottom, something that not a lot of frames have. I know the one that I have for my gaming PC and my streaming PC do not have feet for that lower intake, which is an interesting thing to see on these, and it's been really impressive with the O11 on these.
Yeah, and these feet are pretty tall if you compare them to some other ones. So you could definitely have this thing on carpet and it's still going to breathe fine. Obviously, we recommend it's on tile or wood or something that's not going to soak up, but this would still work.
And also try not to put it on carpet because of issues regarding static electric discharge. Paul, what is static electric discharge?
So static electric discharge, or also known as ESD, is just a static that builds up. Like if I rub my feet on this carpet and then touch Christian, he's going to get a little bit of a shock. So you don't want that electricity that can be generated, you don't want that getting on certain components. Some of these surface mount components are very small, and just the smallest amount of an electrical charge could ruin them. So you want to be very careful and stuff like that. That's why we use an anti-static mat. Or if you're building one at home, probably don't build your computer on carpet, build it in the kitchen or somewhere where you've got tile, something like that. But you can ground yourself just by touching the frame of the case. So if you're ever working, you can just touch the frame and the electricity will ground itself through there.
So, so that what are some good examples of non-electric conducing or conducting materials that would make for good things to put the feet on? So like could wood work for that? Yeah,
wood is great, tile's great. Anything that's like a hard surface, you could even I'll use like a strip of a cardboard box. I've used that when I'm taking having a game night at a buddy's house where you're taking your computer in their basement's carpet and you just lay out, a strip of cardboard or something and set your computer on that.
Okay. Doc Chaos does bring up a good question, and he said, always rinse the filters from the inside out. And let my mistakes help you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea. Obviously, all that stuff's going to collect on the outside of the filter, and so if you run the water through the inside of it, it'll just take it off.
Yep. Good call.
That's a good tip.
Kind of like a coffee filter. You can't,
yeah, exactly.
You can't punch the coffee grounds through the filter. You got to push it back out the way that it came in.
Yep.
That's a good example. Think of it like a coffee filter. Excellent point, Doc. Well said. Right now, Christian's getting those last elements and the power cords plugged onto that motherboard. Now, I guess my question for Christian is, getting the AI, you mentioned that there's a process that you go through for the power cords initially, and then you put the AIO in. So, does the AIO go on first, and then you plug the CPU in, or backwards?
I like to put on my my AIO first, the actual pump onto the retention kit, onto the motherboard. Then I'll route my wire underneath these underneath the pegs here. Kind of hard to see. I'll route my wire underneath after I get it installed and screwed on.
Okay.
That gives it a really good look. You know, that's a really good place to hide that wire if you're trying to get a cleaner aesthetic.
I have seen people plug the wire in, and then try to install the all-in-one, and
oh no.
They get the wire in between the heatsink and the CPU.
Yeah.
And that is,
I take it that's bad.
That's a very bad time.
Yeah, that's when your PC will start shutting down from being too hot. So I got.
And I'm sure it would melt that
right
cord too.
Yeah. So Christian's installing the GPU brace right now. So
cool.
Let's kind
look at that.
of rotate this real quick before you start doing that. This is a pretty good shot for it, I think. Yeah, there we go.
Super simple
So
too.
we've taken out the motherboard mounting screws that we usually put in, and now he's installing, they're the same thread screws, but they're a little longer to compensate for the thickness of this bracket. I got my thick end
Oh,
there,
gotcha.
by the way. Yeah. So that brace is now, I guess he's got one more top screw there. So that's gonna sit there, and you'll probably leave it like that, right, until we get the GPU in.
Yeah.
And then once the GPU is in, we'll put this piece in, and that will actually hold the GPU in place.
Gotcha. It's one of those things where once we see this, it's makes you go, okay, that was obvious. How did we not think about this sooner?
Yeah, exactly. Like, please,
But then again,
every
if you look
motherboard
back,
maker, put those in.
Yeah.
They're great.
And if you look back 10 years, if you look back 10 or 12 years, graphics cards were nowhere near what they are now. I mean, the technology has advanced and evolved so quickly. I can see why it might not have been required, because they used to just be very simple.
Yeah.
So while Christian's doing that, let's talk about that. About what happened with older GPUs and why the cooling needed to become so much more advanced.
Yeah. So
For that,
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say, and for that, you've got a 1050
Yeah.
that has been come apart.
Right, yeah, I've got this 1050 Ti in my hand right here, and you can see it's a lot smaller than this 3090.
Good grief, that is actually hugely different.
Yep, it's a lot. So if this was like a 1080, it would be similarly as big, but I'm gonna take the cooler off this so I can show you the thickness of the PCB here. And you can see the difference in these cards here right now. But once I get this off, the PCB is the same thickness. So all of the beef in that card is in the cooler. So.
And the main primary difference between different branded versions of the NVIDIA graphics cards is simply that fan array and the cooling process.
That's right. And if you get a third-party card, they'll typically overclock it a little bit from the Founders Edition or from the factory. I do have those numbers. So a Founders 3090, if you're getting a Founders, the base clock speed is 1395 megahertz.
Okay.
And it boosts up to 1695. Now I was doing a lot of research on this card trying to find a base clock speed for this, and I couldn't find it. Not on Zotac's website, not anywhere. Right?
That's weird.
They have their boost clock speed. So it will boost up to 1815, which is obviously it's about 120 120 megahertz overclock from the Founders Edition. Now that is its boost speed, so it's only going to do that when it can. But I'm going to guess just from experience that its base clock's going to be probably around 1700.
Okay.
Based on that overclock. We'd be able to find out once we get the system running, but I don't know why they don't have that information available.
Yeah, that's so
kind
weird
of
to me.
Yeah, I thought so too. I was like, there's no way they don't have this, but
Way to go, Zotac.
they didn't. Yeah, come on.
So,
So
wow,
I've got the
that's-
cooler off the video card here. This is our 1050 Ti. So this is your video card.
Okay.
This is the cooler part that was on it that made it look like a video card.
Look at the piping
Just
on the
like
back of
this.
that.
Yeah. So this 3090 here that you see that is this big is actually just as thin as this. Obviously the PCB is a little longer. You can see the length right there, but that's all
Yeah.
this is. And the GPU itself is this chip right here.
And are all the chips the same size?
Usually, yeah, they might fluctuate a tiny bit, but the chip on that is going to be about this size. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. And then the length is just because it needs more cooling and it needs more things to process?
Yeah,
Or-
there's probably more more service mount technologies on this. So on this card, you can see the capacitors here and other service mount components. So this is going to have more of those since it is a higher end card. And then you can see the memory chips on here as well. So this little black
Okay.
square I've got my finger on, you can see these are the memory chips. Obviously, this 3090 has, I believe, 24 gigs of RAM, which is
Yep.
insane. So it's going to have a lot more memory chips than this. I don't know. I forget what this 1050 Ti has on it. Probably like 4.
Yeah, probably.
I would,
Four-
think
I would say
4,
probably 4, if I
maybe
remember
8,
correctly.
But yeah, I think 4. So
And I think that was GDDR5 on the 50 on that 10 on the 1050 or GDDR4, and then these are GDDR6, which is a massive step up when it comes to memory management.
yeah, it really is. It's crazy that 10 series is like
Oh.
kind of getting old. Like
It was actually 2 apparently.
2 gigs.
was a
Yeah.
2
Yeah.
gigs.
They might, yeah. Maybe they had a higher end 4 gig model somewhere, but yeah. It's crazy that
That's-
it's that, 2 gigs, that seems like nothing now, but that's a lot. I remember I had, one of my older systems, I had a 780, which was, the high end of that generation.
Yeah, the 760.
Yeah, 760. Yeah, I bought a U780 from here, and I was making a quad SLI system, and I was going to use a different manufacturer of each 780. So I had like a PNY 780, a Zotac 780, an EVGA 780, and a Gigabyte 780, all on a giant EVGA FTW board. So
Oh my God.
yeah,
That's I gotta know, how did that work out? For you?
Yeah.
it was great, but the 780s had I think it was 2 gigs of RAM, and when you SLI, you don't get more RAM. So I had 4 awesome cards just with 2 gigs of VRAM. So it was cool. It became pretty taxing anytime I had to do anything with the system or anytime there was an issue. So it was definitely more
Really?
of like a novelty thing, and I do not do that anymore. But
Let's see how many things I can plug onto this board.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Aged Bat Dad says, I love my CLX build. That's awesome. We're so glad to hear that you had a great experience. Yeah, which one did you get?
Yeah, that's
and
great.
do you mind
I'm
if we
glad you
ask
love
what
it.
you use it for? Is it for streaming or gaming or general office use, architecture, media, creating Skynet?
Yeah.
One of the things I do want to point out is really great in this O11 case is all the grommet sockets on the back to make the cabling just that much easier to push through. So often back in the day, you had the only thing that you could do is you just had to route this stuff around in the case and then shove it down next to the power supply, and then cases started having a separated area for the power supply, but there really wasn't any way to get it back because these boards were mounted directly onto the back of the case. Well, now, as you notice, this motherboard is actually mounted on a wall that's about 2/3 of the way back into the case. Why is that, and how is that helpful?
Yeah, so the motherboard tray here is raised, you can see like you pointed out, so it's right here and it droops. The case actually comes down probably like 3 or 4 inches there, and that is so we can have the power supply mounted to the back of the case and keep all those wires in the back. And then any heat from that power supply, it has its own intake on the back, so it's going to pull in fresh air from outside and blow it out the back. So none of that heat is going to get into the interior of this case. Obviously, that
really
allows
good.
us to run the cables, make it look cleaner as well. But keeping that heat out of the main case is probably the biggest performance reason to do that.
And it helps keep the board cool as well as everything else, which is great.
Right. Yeah.
Speaking of airflow, since we do have this shot, let's talk about that. We've got three RGB CLX fans that are blowing up from the bottom. Obviously, once the graphics card is installed, those three fans pull air into and onto the board, so you've got air blowing directly into the graphics card and into the case. The top three, you've got two on that 240 that blow up through the top of the case, the one single, which is going to go straight through and out, and then the one on the rear is also an exhaust fan.
That's right. So yeah, 7 fans total, like you mentioned. Our intake is down here at the bottom. So these fans are pulling in fresh air from outside the case, blowing over all of our components. Excuse me, Christian. And it's going to exhaust out the top and the back. So the video card is going to sit in just like this once we get that installed. So the video card is going to get all that fresh air coming in through the bottom, which is really nice. It obviously has 3 fans as well.
I'm still fascinated by the fact that I had no idea that was why the fans always face down, was so that the under fans could go up. I mean, you would think that I'd figured that out, but no, and most of the time which means most of the time you never see the fan side of the card unless you've got it side mounted, which I did see at the show in one of the builds. They had a side-mounted graphics card. So where those panels are, the back panels where you could put fans, there was a case that had the 3090 Ti mounted to that, and then there were fans on the back of that as well. So it was mounted on the front, the fans were on the back. How is that a thing that you can do, and is that something that you have to have a special board for?
So you don't need a special board for it, but you will need a special cable to do that. That pretty much comes down to a case limitation there. If we can go back to that side shot real quick, please, Jason. So you can see this kind of cutout right here. This is a cover for if we were going to vertical mount the GPU in this case. So there is an extra riser card, and the outputs would kind of stick just like that. So the card could be mounted like this if we wanted to. That is more of an aesthetic thing. But this
not standing up though?
This case does allow you to do it up here, so it does come with brackets where we could install the video card like this as well if we were to install those extra brackets.
And then you'd have and that would go to the card down below that would have all of your ports.
Yeah, so there's what's called a riser cable. Typically used in servers, I think, is really where you see those used the most, because they have to mount the GPU a little differently, because servers are usually pretty thin, but it's a cable that will plug into the video card just like a PCIe slot, and the other side plugs into your PCIe slot. So it's kind of like an extension cord for the video card.
I love P-Steph does have a question. Says, do PSU fans suck air in or blow air out?
Typically they're going to suck air in and then blow them out the back of the case. You can look at how the fan's installed. So typically if you're looking at a fan like in this shot right here, you can see these fan grills. So wherever the side that you see the grill, that's going to have air coming out of. So you don't usually see the fan grill if you're looking into a PSU, so it's going to be sucking air in, and then there's exhausted out the back of the PSUs. It's completely enclosed on the other side and on the part where you plug in the cable, so no air is going to go through that.
Yeah, so Paul, that picture of that graphics card that I sent you,
Yeah,
I was like, oh my gosh, this thing is wild.
Right.
That was the side mounted, and I did notice it had a unique cable structure that was running down through it. I did not, however, see that lower. I didn't think to look at the back to see that lower case area. Doc Chaos mentioned that he saw a picture of the build and it was wild. It honestly was fascinating. There was a couple different versions, but I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say, because it was shown there, it was announced. It was a proof of concept build, and basically it's a PC in a PC. The reason they had to mount that card on the vertical like that at this, I would say it's not perpendicular, it's parallel with the motherboard, was because there was a case thing that came out, and there was a NUC, which is an all-in-one tiny little super powered box of joy that that just sits, that plugs in, and then you have a computer inside of a computer. It was absolutely mystifying. I was thoroughly entranced by it.
Yeah, that was, I got to see that build before it went to the show, and I had no idea you could mount GPUs like that in this case, but yep, the case comes with the hardware and you can install it there. And the cabling, you obviously saw the regular power connector cables that have to go in it, but yeah, that unique cabling you saw was that riser cable that went from the video card to the motherboard.
Awesome. You know, and so while he's doing the cabling, I feel like this is a good spot to take a look at that and some other things. So over the past weekend, we at CLX got a chance to hang out in sunny San Diego, California for TwitchCon 2022. With an opportunity to take a look at so many different elements of the show, we went through with a camera and captured some of it for you. Jason's gonna show it right now.
The 130 different machines that CLX has here at the show, 30 of them are right here for the content creators, featuring an incredible i9-12900 processor from Intel, an RTX 3080 graphics card, and 32 gigs of RAM. We have set them up for success to make sure their streams, TwitchCon 2022, are top-notch. Behind me is 75 of our 130 devices that are here at the show. This is the free play area, and it's all powered by Intel processors.
What an incredible look. We had such a great weekend there, and as you can see by the Twitter link that I put in there, that build is gorgeous, and that side-mounted white matching CPU was just, or GPU was wild. I loved it, and you know, like it just goes to show innovation is constantly happening when it comes to CLX and Intel. I think it's a great thing, and of course, as a, you know, I would say tech junkie, I'm always just fascinated by the new things that people do. It's super creative, and it's also a great. It leads us into a great segue, because it's always important when we're talking about shows like this, and we're doing shows like this, to let people know it's not required that you know everything about PCs. That's one of the reasons why we love, you know, we love helping educate people, but it's not just about the education, it's about the opportunity. And part of that is the opportunity to build your own PC. So let's take a look at our website. The website gives you the opportunity to customize and brand your machine for exactly what it is you need to do. Whether you're a content creator, a gamer, an architect, or a web designer, every different PC has an opportunity to be the best build that you might need. From choosing your processor to your motherboard, memory, and graphics cards, there are tons of options on here, and you don't have to be an expert to use it. If you choose something that isn't necessarily compatible with another element in your lineup, Our system will actually tell you there's a conflict and then lead you through the steps in order to correct it. And of course, if you have questions, we have a chat available right down there in the lower right-hand corner of the website at all times to try and get you as much help as you can, as you need. We also have pre-built systems and even laptops, including options to purchase peripherals. It's basically a one-stop shopping center. To find out more, simply go to clxgaming.com and build your PC now. Got it. It's honestly a really great system.
It really is.
So,
yeah.
and we got custom systems, so many different types of frames, whether you want a big frame, little frame. Like if you have a small desk area, but you want, powerful material, you don't have to go with something gigantic. You have tiny little ones. The one that George has, it is wicked. That thing is it's like this little box, and it's just all sorts of power. It's wild. You had to go and block me posting good pics of it. There we go. Yes. So, but that is where it's at. So that was a great example of, first of all, TwitchCon had an absolute blast there. And of course, if you'd like to know more, all you got to do is check out our website. It's actually really fun. Oftentimes, I know Paul does it too. We go in there and just build out our super systems. If I had an endless supply of money, what would I do?
Yeah.
And I can build some pretty wicked liquid cooled open loop systems that are just worth every cent. But if you know what you want, you know what to get. It's great. So H Bat Dad says, I want a gaming PC now. I have my streaming PC. Oh, well, that's awesome. That is awesome. So are you gaming and streaming on the same PC, if you don't mind me asking? And I ask that because some people do, and other times we kind of use whatever our other system was to, because originally I streamed and gamed on the same PC, then I had to get a gaming PC, and then had to step the streaming PC up a little because it was not quite where it needed to be. And luckily we were able to do that with an AMD Ryzen 5, so, which is a nice little workhorse. And that kind of leads us back to that other question about AMD versus the, let's see here. Like AMD versus Intel. It again, if it works, it works.
Mm-hmm. So
you said you tried, but your GPU is an AMD 500 series. Now, I'm going to be real honest. I am not super familiar with AMD graphics cards. Paul, what do you know about the 500 series?
Yeah, so I'm going to assume he probably means either a 560, 570, 580, maybe a 550.
Okay.
That is a few generations older, so it might struggle for streaming depending on what he's got. I know there was quite a lot of issues with the 580s as well, so that could be as well. Now I believe there's a 5500, which was a newer generation, so maybe he's referring to that, but I'm gonna guess it's either a 560, 570, or 580. And that is a little bit older card. Those were good. Those were good cards for as far as like budget goes. You get a lot of bang for your buck, but they definitely weren't like the most amazing, best performing card out there.
Okay, and so I guess it's a 560. Okay, gotcha.
560. Okay, yeah, that's either probably a 2 or a 4 gig card. Probably good for some 1080 gaming. But yeah, that'll probably struggle to stream.
Yeah, I would imagine it's probably medium to low graphics settings will get you that slightly higher FPS that you might want. I will say, Age Bat Dad, you should definitely check out what's going on the website now, including our pre-builds. There's always different sales going on and different opportunities to just save a couple bucks here, save a couple bucks there. And that is one of the things I love about it, because you don't want to have to build it. You can buy something that's already ready to ship and get it as soon as possible.
Yeah, we've got a lot of ready to ship in stock now. We've been really kind of focusing on building up some inventory of those and kind of preparing for the holidays. So there's a lot of selection as far as ready to ship. Not to just quickly change the subject real quick, but we are installing the secondary drive right now. So this is a good time to show this part of the case. This is definitely one of my favorite things about this case. So we do have these hot swappable bays here. You can see Christian has pulled out the cover for this. So there's 2 trays in here, so we can fit 2 drives, either 3.5 inch or 2.5 inch. And then there are the SATA connectors deep in there. And the cables are already plugged into the power supply and the motherboard, respectively. So all we have to do is just slide this hard drive in and it will connect.
Which is wildly awesome now, especially with a 3.5, because before we've seen the 2.5 smaller ones. This is a full disk platter-based hard drive.
Yeah.
But that was one thing you always had to worry about, was you have to get your power cord in there, and then you'd have to plug in your data cord and then get it mounted inside the system. Now you just pop it on a tray and slide it in and it's good to go.
Yeah, this is really like a, I don't know, like a quality of life thing here, maybe. You know, like this part of this case and that motherboard stand or brace are like my 2 favorite things about this build. They're like 2 kind of weird, quirky things, but those are definitely my favorite things about it.
Nice. Jumping back up, a couple comments. Doc said I might be crazy, but I swear I saw Jake from State Farm in one of those shots. It's possible. Well, there was a State Farm booth there, so it's very possible Jake from State Farm was actually there.
Screws right there.
Thank you.
That's awesome. I know our boy Patrick Mahomes was in there. Did you see that Andy Reid commercial last night? He was in there with the State Farm commercials.
No, I didn't.
Andy Reid's in there. That's good.
Yep. A lot of cool things, including Wendy's Frosties that Jason and I had several of. Actually, Jason and I think Ivory did too. It was purple, but it was vanilla Frosty with nerds on it.
Was this at the con?
At the con, and they were just handing them out.
Oh,
and I'll
I'm
be
so
honest, that was like every time I walked over there, because it was right next to the Intel booth, we're getting ready to film something, and I turned around, if we had 5 minutes, before we were filming, I was running over and grabbing this little cup,
Grabbing a
and it was
Frosty?
just, it was great because the nerds kind of added that tart balance against the sweet of the Frosty. Doc Chaos says the best part about being a Zamboni driver is my unfettered access to PC grade glycol. We use it in our refrigeration systems, and we buy it by the 55-gallon drum, so 32 ounces is no big deal.
Is he really a
Great
Zamboni
flavor.
driver? That is awesome.
Oh yeah, Doc
need
is
a
like my
Zamboni driver
lead
here.
mod.
Yeah. Christian is a big hockey fan. So.
I love hockey. I've played hockey since I was a little kid.
Yeah, hockey is definitely Doc Chaos's jam. Doc is my lead mod over at the Respawn All-Stars for my stream, and an essential piece of the machine there. So
that's
but
awesome.
yeah,
you had to come in here and
there are
talk hockey
videos
with
of
Christian.
him. There are videos of him driving the Zamboni. He can tell you everything you want to know about a Zamboni.
That's awesome.
He used to work. It was the Blackhawks, right? Doc, I believe it was the Blackhawks that he was the driver for
Oh wow, that'd be cool.
That's sick.
in Chicago. Yeah.
Well, we
All
are
right, we've got
slapping the panels on here and.
Plastic on the side of glass.
Okay. Yep. Oh, yep. I think it's just on now. I think I got the plastic off on the front. So.
All right, we installed that 500 gig over. This is great. I can't wait to talk a little bit about the stats on this and turn this back around and see it when it's on. Those of you who are into the ASMR, there you go.
This is your chance. I'm free. Yeah. That plastic's off on there. Dude, Leon Lee doesn't mess around with their plastic on their side panels.
No. You are protected for life.
This is a workout.
Yeah, dude, combine that with picking up the sarcophagus, dude, you're good.
And we'll show that sarcophagus here. Do you want to do that now real quick before we get everything?
Let's do that while we're throwing these panels on. So
all of the Raw Edition devices are shipped in what we call the sarcophagus. It's included in the price of it. You can get a sarcophagus shipping with other models, but it is there. You just add that on to the total price of your cart. This is why you can ensure that you will never have to, ask Paul to go to the gym, because he has to lift these. It's a giant wood case with 2 latches across the top, CLX branded, and that shows up to your house with your PC very carefully packed inside with stuffing and fluff and love.
yeah,
made that sound
these
more
are such
awkward
a
than I
cool
intended.
thing. Remember we started carrying these? It's so cool, and we've seen customers will like use it as a PC stand. They'll have the crate with their PC on top of it. It looks really nice.
I'm gonna be honest. That's exactly what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, that's what I would do if I had one. One
my
customer
gaming
like
PC
painted his crate and everything. It was really cool.
Oh man. Yeah, I have my gaming PC down underneath the right-hand side of the desk on a chrome rack riser, and then I have my other PC, my streaming PC on the left-hand side underneath it. I have an L-shaped desk, and they're there, but they're not really super worth staring at. I mean, my gaming PC has a couple fans on it, nothing like what you guys build. So I'm definitely rearranging things. So I've got this thing ready to go.
Yeah, it's kind of cool when
great.
a PC can be like a display piece. It's really nice.
And Ivory, it was grape colored, but not grape flavored. It was vanilla. But yeah, if it had a grape colored Frosty, my God, that'd be weird. Right, French.
I always dip French fries in my Frosty if I get them.
And here's a really weird thing about Frosties. I am lactose intolerant. I do not and cannot and should never do dairy. Frosties do not bother me.
Are they like frozen yogurt or something? Or is it like actual ice cream? My aunt was that, and every time she took us for ice cream, she'd get frozen yogurt, and it wouldn't mess with her stomach, so.
Yeah.
That's how I know that.
Pulling all the time. No, we're over here. Dietitian.
Yeah. All right, so I think we're at moment of truth. You can tell the motherboard has power. You can see the little RGB coming in there.
Oh
that
yeah,
is
look
coming
at that.
from the
It's
motherboard.
already starting in the back.
Yep, so this isn't even turned on, but we know the board at least has power, so that's good. So I think we're ready to roll there.
Let's check it out and plug it in.
All right. Whenever you on your mark, Chris.
All right.
Oh my God, look at the card light up.
Yeah, that card looks great. Dang, I didn't realize that card had that
What
much
the-
RGB
look at
on
the
it.
RAM!
That looks so nice.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this is awesome. The card even has some RGB. You can see it a little bit in the shot on top of the card as well. That's awesome.
That's ridiculous. Now I'm super hats off to Zotac. Good Lord, that's the RAM is just striping. That's the coolest RAM I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's the coolest DDR5 RAM we've used on the show so far.
That is incredible. Let's take a look one more time at everything that went into this machine. This, of course, it's a Intel Battlebox Ultimate. It is a raw edition by CLX. It features an O11 Leon Lee full tower, and it is silver. This machine also is being powered by an i9-12900KF 3.2 gigahertz processor by Intel with an ASRock Z690 Steel Legend DDR5 motherboard. It comes with 32 gigs, 4800 each for the RAM, and it's 216 gigs for, and that is an Oloy?
Oloy, yep.
Oloy, yeah. Who I'm now a massive fan of. It's being the graphics is going to be shoved through a GeForce RTX 3090 24 gig graphics card. The operating system features a 500 gig M.2 PCIe 3.0 NVMe hard drive, and its secondary drive is going to be a 3.5-inch Seagate Barracuda, and that's 4 terabytes. That's 4,000 gigs of storage space. It's being cooled by a CLX Quench 240 closed liquid cooler with 7 different CLX RGB fans, and it's all being powered by an EVGA 850BQ. It's an 80+ bronze 850 watt power supply. This is going out to Matthew in North Carolina, and congratulations, Matthew. This is an incredible PC. We're excited to hear your feedback, and honestly, I can't stop staring at all the colors. Gentlemen, any final thoughts on this?
I don't think so. This thing looks great. So congrats, Matthew. Hope you enjoy it.
And I will say this, everybody, you do want to tune in next week. We have a very special show with a special guest. We're not going to announce it yet. Keep your eyes on our socials. And if you would like to follow us on our socials, make sure you do so at CLX Gaming for YouTube, TikTok, and Twitter. On behalf of Jason in production and Christian and Paul, I'm DJ BluePDX. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.